Since the birth of society, people have always sought out ways to distinguish their status and wealth from others. It might be through your title or your family name. It might be through financial means, such as owning a grand estate or wearing the finest of clothes. But believe it or not, there was once a point in history when wealth, status, and influence could all be communicated through the possession of a single item: the humble pineapple. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Historidame, and today we're discussing the bizarre history of the pineapple. When discussing pineapples today, the topic usually arises somewhere within a debate about appropriate pizza toppings. I will be pro-pineapple until I die, but there are many who would seek to challenge me and claim that pineapple on pizza is a culinary crime of the highest order. Regardless of your current stance on the topic, however, if you showed a pineapple-covered pizza to a 17th century European, they would look at it as though it was topped with gold. This is because during the period between the pineapple's discovery in Europe and its mass cultivation, it was hailed as the ultimate symbol of status, with a single fruit potentially costing the equivalent of $8,000 in today's money. The story of the pineapple begins somewhere in South America. We don't know for certain which is the country of origin for the pineapple, but archaeological evidence has found mention of its use and consumption as far back as 1200 to 800 BC in Peru. The native people who first cultivated this fruit quickly spread it across the entire region, until it eventually ended up on the island of Guadalupe, where it would be first encountered by European explorers in 1493. Christopher Columbus, known for committing atrocities against the native people, would unfortunately be credited as the first European to encounter the pineapple. He and his men were amazed at the flavor and appearance of the fruit, and their raving about it would prompt many return trips in order to bring these pineapples back to Europe. But a journey across the Atlantic Ocean was no easy feat. With factors like weather and the incredibly long duration of the trip, many ships were too slow and too hot to keep the hundreds of pineapples from rotting before they reached their destination. These pineapple shipments would require not only the fastest and most reliable vessels, but also an incredible amount of luck in order to get them back safely. Even still, most pineapples would arrive bruised or rotten, resulting in an extremely low supply. But despite the difficulty in acquiring a pineapple, their popularity in Europe continued to soar. Unlike other fruits, the pineapple was previously unknown to the Old World, so it did not hold the same cultural significance that a more common fruit might. For example, the apple was already associated with the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden, while the pomegranate was tied closely to the Greek goddess Persephone. The pineapple, however, was free of these connotations, which allowed Europeans to give it a new significance. To them, the pineapple's exotic appearance gave it a mythical quality, making it a food reserved for only the most important of people. The fruit's natural sweetness was also greatly sought after, since items involving sugar were in short supply. Needless to say, the pineapple's unique characteristics being discovered at just the right time would sow the seeds of its massive popularity. Because of their high demand and limited availability, the pineapple came with a hefty price tag. In the early years of their introduction to Europe, acquiring a pineapple was a task that was out of reach for all except the ultra-wealthy, usually royalty. Charles II in particular was said to adore pineapples, not only because of their sweetness, but because he was amused by the fact that the fruit looks like it's wearing a tiny crown. He would even go as far as to commission a painting of his gardener presenting him with a pineapple. One can only assume that he would also love it on pizza. But most of the people who went out of their way to purchase this renowned fruit did not do it with the intention of eating them. No, at those prices, eating them would be considered a waste. Instead, owners would display their pineapples at lavish parties so that all their guests could gaze upon it and cry out with envy. Some of these events would be centered around the pineapple itself, where it would be passed around so that all could admire it. Others took a more subtle approach at flaunting their wealth, by simply displaying it and pretending as though it was no big deal. These pineapples were even expensive enough to warrant security guards, since those transporting them posed a prime target for thieves. One reported incident of pineapple theft involved a Mr. Godding, who was sentenced to 7 years in Australia for his crimes, 1 for each pineapple that he stole. But for those who could not afford a pineapple of their own, some opportunistic businessmen proposed another solution: pineapple rental shops. For a lesser price, people could go to these establishments in order to rent a pineapple by the hour. With their treasured fruit in tow, they would then bring it with them to parties, in order to show it off to everyone that they knew. At the end of the day, the pineapple would be returned to the rental shop, where it would then be rented out the next day, until it inevitably began to rot. When it came to actually eating a pineapple, this was only done once nature had begun to take its toll. And of course, only the owner would have this luxury. As was the case for most people, however, even renting a pineapple was well out of reach. Those fruitless plebs would instead turn to one of the many pineapple-themed products that was available during the time. Companies began selling pineapple-shaped teapots, tableware, and jelly molds. There were pineapple-centric clock cases, bookends, and paintings. Pineapples were even featured in architecture, such as the famous Dunmore pineapple in Scotland, which was commissioned by the Earl of Dunmore in 1761. Europeans were going absolutely crazy for pineapples, and with the fruit in such high demand, some determined individuals began looking for ways to grow their own. Of course, reproducing the pineapple came with some glaring issues, mainly that they only grow in tropical climates, which Northern Europe is not exactly known for. Because of this issue, pineapples would have to be cultivated in greenhouses. It isn't known for certain who exactly was the first person to grow a pineapple in a non-tropical climate, but a woman known as Agnes Bloch is usually credited as being the first one to do so, in 1687. Peter de la Court, however, is the individual who is cited as coming up with the most efficient way of doing it. His methods consisted of using hot rooms that were kept artificially warm and humid. These greenhouses were carefully designed in order to allow smoke and fumes to escape, while also maintaining the temperature inside. These dedicated hothouses were called pineries, and they came with a myriad of problems. First of all, they were incredibly expensive, so only the ultra-wealthy could afford to fund one. The Gentleman's Magazine of 1764 estimated that it cost around £150 to build a hothouse, and cover the annual running costs and plant stock. Adjusted for inflation, this comes up to just over $33,000 today. And this investment was not guaranteed to pay off. During the mid-17th century, the heating of greenhouses was achieved through furnaces that were placed within the structure. These stoves required constant stoking with coal, and had this little issue of burning the pinery to the ground. To add insult to injury, pineapple plants take several years to produce fruit, so the owner might not even have a single pineapple to show for their efforts. Despite the amount of money sunk into the problem, it would still take decades before pineapples were readily available. In the end, it was the invention of the steamship, with their superior speed and reliability, that allowed pineapple-growing enterprises to really take off. The most notable such business was started in 1900 by James Dole, when he began a plantation in Hawaii, known as the Hawaiian Pineapple Company. This would later become the Dole Food Company, which stood uncontested for over 7 decades. In that time, his plantation produced more than 75% of the world's pineapples. With pineapple production booming, the fruit's price finally began to drop, and soon, to the horror of rich people everywhere, even the working class could afford them. And so, with the pineapple now commonplace, it slowly lost its position as a status symbol, and pineapple mania finally came to an end. Hey everyone! Thank you for watching! If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like or a comment down below. If you want to see more content like this, you can also subscribe to my channel and keep up to date on all the fun history videos of the future. But for now, I bid you farewell.